Most of us don't delegate because we don't even know what to delegate in the first place. And that is what we talked about last week. How to come up with this list of maybe 5 or so things, whether it's meetings or tasks, that we can hand off to a team member. Because remember, we hired a team so we don't have to do everything. Doesn't mean we're handing off the stuff nobody wants to do. It means we are leveraging our team. We are getting more done through our team. This is something we do whether we have one person or a virtual assistant or we have a team of 500 people. We need to make sure we are leveraging them. That's how we scale. That's how we grow in our own careers. That's how we grow our businesses. Literally, leader of any size, situation, team, whatever, we got to be delegating. We've got our list, okay? Today, we're going to talk about the how to delegate, some of the brass tacks behind it, because one of the biggest reasons we don't delegate is because, or we don't delegate again, I should say, is because we try it one time. It doesn't really go that well. And then we say to ourselves, nope, no thanks, not for me. So today we're going to talk about how to avoid the delegating going wrong situation. All right, here we go. Welcome to Managing Made Simple, a real talk podcast about the ins and outs of leading a team. I'm Leah Garvin, your host, and bring a decade of experience driving team operations in places like Google, Apple, and Microsoft on a mission to make leading your team easier. From delegating to feedback to one-on-ones and more, each week is a mini masterclass on making leading your team easier. Whether you're managing one person or 100, everyone is welcome to hang out on Managing Made Simple. Delegating effectively is all about setting expectations. But I'm not just going to say that, drop the mic, and walk away. This can be tricky because it can be hard to find the right balance of wanting to set the parameters and wanting to give space for people to do it their own way. Delegating that's not effective is saying, you've got this, go run with it, do it your way, and then looking at it and being like, oh, this is your way? Like, yeah, I don't think so. Instead, we want to define, okay, what even do we need to see? And this is a tough one, and I have been there. So a couple of years ago, I hired an assistant to help me take on some of like my kind of administrative work and some of the marketing work. And I did what I felt like it was a really solid onboarding. We walked through all my content, all the things that I needed. And then she got started. And when she handed back the first thing, I looked at it and I was like, well, this isn't what I wanted. And I had that flash for a second of like, why did I hire someone? I should have just kept it myself. I should have just done it. This is now not faster because I have to go over this again with her. And I started to think all of the things I know all of you are thinking when you delegate and it's not what you like. You think, shouldn't have done that, or never gonna do that again, or that was a waste of time, or gosh, now I'm further behind, and we start to spiral. And I know that because I did that too. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, I thought I told her what I wanted. We walked through all this in onboarding. This is her job. She's supposed to be writing content or whatever she was doing, like putting together presentations and doing some pitches for media stuff. Like, why? This doesn't sound like me. This isn't how I'd want this written. This isn't whatever. I had a laundry list of these things that weren't like kind of hitting the bar for me. And I looked at that list and I said, okay, well, how would she really know this? Because I only knew those things were missing because I actually stopped to think about it. I said, write a pitch or put together this deck or whatever. And I gave some examples, but we hadn't talked about the biggest thing, which is the non-negotiables when it comes to delegating. Now, in another example, I was working with a really high-end PR firm. They were charging clients $12,000 a month for representation. And the business owner, she gets on with me and she says, hey, I have a really high standard for how I want my team to show up. But I'm worried if I establish this is like what decks need to look like, this is our email signature, this is even dress code for meetings, I worry people are going to think I'm a micromanager. And so I haven't been saying those things. And then I've just been taking on more of the work because I know that I'm going to uphold that standard. And I don't really know what to do. I know there's an opportunity here, but again, I worry it's too nitpicky and am I going to be a micromanager? And in that question, she was asking, how do I establish and even articulate these non-negotiables? And so as you're listening today, I want you to think about the list you came up with last week and think, what are the non-negotiables to be able to hand this off effectively? Because I know Just coming up with that list does not mean your team is going to do the thing perfectly, especially if it's taking on a really high stakes meeting or something that is like really high visibility or whatever it is that you're like, well, I was doing it because I know I'm going to do it right. And it is like my name on the line if it doesn't get done right. Establishing the non-negotiables, this is the way that we uphold the standard. And the reason it is not micromanaging is because we are establishing this up front. We are establishing it at the moment of handing it off. This is the expectation setting, which is the conditions for delegating. Now, non-negotiables, they can look like a number of things. I like to break it down into 3 different categories. There's kind of presentation. What does something need to look like? Is there a template that you use? Is there a format? Is there a formula? If you run a luxury med spa, are you using certain scrubs or uniform? If you run a gym, if you have client meetings, like do you wear a blazer? Whatever it is, okay? And sometimes you can't be so specific with some of that stuff, but like you get what I'm talking about. Non-presentation might be sort of like, how are we being perceived by our clients? Now, for that PR firm, we talked a lot about that. Hey, when we engage with a client and they're paying $12,000 a month for our service, they expect a level of polish. They expect the emails to look consistent, the decks to be in a certain template. They expect us to show up looking like we are like gonna crush like the pitch and get them on Good Morning America, whatever it is. There is an expectation that the client has. It's not the boss saying, because I said so. And the way that we communicate the non-negotiables is in the context of the goal of the company. And that's what presentation is all about, because it can feel a little bit subjective, to be honest. It can feel like, well, I just like it this way. So you paint the picture. My med spa listeners out there, if you're trying to create a 5-star hotel luxury experience, what would that look like? What presentation pieces would be needed? Maybe when someone walks in the doors, they're greeted by name. They feel like you were looking forward to them being there. You ask them about their kids' graduation and where they're going to school next year. You remember their vacation that's coming up, and part of the treatment that they're doing is to get ready for that. And you're asking, did you get your outfits picked out? Are you ready to go? You are showing them that I care about you. You offer them a beverage, or you know their favorite beverage because you've written it down with their name in the scheduling system, and you bring it right out. Then you walk them to their room, you do more chit chat, you're not in a rush, you're not making the person feel like they're in your way. Whatever that is, this is painting a picture of the non-negotiables. You can imagine what that looks like in a salon or a gym or in a retail store. When you have a service business, maybe you have a marketing agency, right? And a client gets on the phone and you already know what this person is going to be asking. How is my campaign doing? What vision do you have for my business? How are you going to help me get there? Am I getting the ROI out of you, right? The presentation is actually sort of preemptively addressing what does this person need to keep doing business with us, right? That is what that's about. And you establish not a rule book, not 50 pages, not a million things so that people start rebelling against it, but they're bought in on the why and they understand, oh, okay, yeah, we are creating this luxury experience. Someone's putting their whole brand in our hands to carry forward. What would someone want in that situation? And you ask your team that, and they start to talk through it, right? If you are building out, if you're building software or, working on where you maybe aren't seeing the customer every single day, right? We're talking about some kind of customer facing roles. You're talking about, well, what would the quality of the product be to be able to satisfy this goal, this mission? Right? What do we need to be able to ensure that our stakeholders don't come back to us with a million questions? Hey, working at Google, working at Apple, working at Microsoft, if I'm presenting to an SVP, my deck can't be a mess, because what's it going to look like? That I'm not prepared, that I didn't do my due diligence, that I'm not meticulous. They're going to start poking holes at everything. That is part of the presentation. So you give the team the context. It's not just because I said so, and they understand that. The second non-negotiable is timing. What's the due date? Sometimes we don't even know that, but when do you want to check in? What do check-ins look like? What level of polish do people need? And that is a non-negotiable because that is what's going to give you comfort that you can keep letting go because you've seen progress along the way. I'm telling you, we don't want to delegate something and then check back at the end and be like, what? This is what you came up with? This is not the answer. At least have one check-in along the way where maybe you say, hey, we're going to just touch base on track. Yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. And we don't even need a meeting, but you're giving space to, as that person is getting in the rhythm of it, they are able to ask a question. A lot of times when I hand something off, let's say that someone has a week to do it, I'll say, hey, let's check in on Wednesday. If it's about 50% baked or whatever, show me, the presentation, some of the ideas you have, what it looks like to kind of what the plan is for the rest of the week, something like that, right? If it's a research project, maybe you're asking them kind of what kinds of questions you are going to be asking, but you provide space so that if someone's stuck, they don't just try to muscle through it and come back to you later. I was working with an engineer years ago. I was coaching her. She had just joined a team and her manager said, okay, just, get up to speed, just kind of, go through our wikis and our documents and our drive folder, whatever else, and let me know if you had questions. And he said, okay, we'll meet in a couple weeks to kind of go through it. So I was talking to her more frequently than she was even talking to her manager. I was coaching her through this. And she said, oh my gosh, I just spent the last 4 days, pouring through kind of docs and questions. And I don't want to bother anybody. So I've just kind of been figuring this out. And I think I finally got an answer, but I don't really know. Like, what a waste of time. The person was not ready to take that on. The manager should have said, you are new here. I will check in with you in, a day or two. No question is too small. Like, here's the kind of questions people typically have when they're starting. And then that person would have been spinning for days and days and days. Like, we have to recognize as leaders, sometimes people don't want to bother us. I know a lot of you out there, your teams ask you too many questions and you're like, well, I wish they would do a little bit without me. But you can also run into the other piece and they're asking no questions and they're just muscling through it and you're paying them to be spinning their wheels, and that's expensive and it's demoralizing for that person. So a piece of this is also, these are the types of questions, like I said, or, hey, when it's this kind of question, here's how you figure that out. This is the kind of things to bring me in on, right? And then that's where the timing piece is. And then of course, what's the due date? When is this needed by? I had a client come to me that runs a property management service, and they do stuff for nonprofits, and they had to submit an RFP for a grant. And one of her team members said, and she had him do this project. It was like a week-long project. And they got to the end of the week and he said, well, the grant didn't need to be submitted, so I decided not to do it yet. And she's like, well, no, I asked you to have the paperwork done by the end of the week. And he said, well, no, the grant wasn't due. And that was a miscommunication on, hey, it doesn't matter what the external deadlines are. This is our internal deadline. And this is what done is, and this is when it has to be. And so getting clear with your team members, sometimes they can sort of take timelines into their own hands, and sometimes that's okay. But if you need it earlier for something else, this guy on her team didn't have context that she was going to be, reviewing the grant with other stakeholders or whatever she needed to do. As the boss, she can decide that. We want to be really clear about that so that you say, okay, this is that deadline, this is why, and here's what progress I have to see along the way. And then our third non-negotiable is what success looks like. What is a good job? Are you asking someone to get something all the way up to where you're approving it and then you're giving feedback and they're running with it? Are you hoping that it's completely done? Are they sending it out to the client? Are they completely placing the order? Are they finishing the thing and they're sharing it with you for FYI, for visibility, for a conversation after? What does done look like? And giving examples of that, showing examples of that. If it's something that you used to do that you're handing off and you have a visual of it, if you have a written example of that, a video of it, a testimonial of it, whatever it is, you've got to show them what done looks like. Other examples from past team members. People need to see, oh, done actually means this client pitches in this format. It talks about these things. It covers these questions. It has this deck that goes with it. It's emailed in this way. Oh, done is all this other stuff I didn't really think about. Or If it's taking on managing a meeting, right? A lot of the stuff on our list is taking on a meeting. This is what done looks like. You have sent a meeting that has an agenda. You have submitted a pre-work thing, 24 hours so people can read it, or pre-reading. You have facilitated the meeting according to the agenda. You kept to it. There is some action items coming out of it. You have followed up with people. You've rescheduled the follow-up if there's needed. That's full ownership. So you want to talk about people to what done looks like. So there's no confusion there, because I think that's one of the big places. Folks say to me all the time, I feel like my team, they start something and it's going okay. And then they get about halfway through and they're like, I just want to run this by you. I just want to run this by you. I just want to run this by you. Can you take a look here? I just want to get your feedback. And they don't feel comfortable to actually dive into the pool and finish. They don't feel comfortable owning it. And you're answering the question because, hey, they're coming to you and you don't want them to screw it up. But by talking about, hey, let's walk through actually what it would look like to figure this out, answer this question on your own. Now you are getting people that are way more self-sufficient, that can actually take something all the way across the line. And that is how you get that savings. You can get a little bit of savings. You can get some of the hours that we've been promising from delegating slices of things and still answering a lot of questions along the way. But the true unlock, when you're especially with these meetings that you can fully hand off, is when you can literally carve back out hour after hour after hour. We're thinking, I think we said 5 to 10 hours a week at least. Think about all of that time. This is 20 to 40 plus hours a month that you can be now reallocating into your business, back to your life, back to not sitting at this freaking computer all day, whatever you're doing all day. This is huge. Okay. If you are the primary service provider in your business, which I know a lot of us are that are small business owners, this is now you're back at the $1,000 an hour tasks instead of the $20 an hour tasks. If you are a corporate manager, this is how you actually show your value so that you can get promoted and you can keep growing. Right? So this is where the money is, right? No matter what sort of role that you have, is by getting the heck out of the weeds. And we can't do that if we're delegating stuff and people are getting it wrong and they're not doing it right and they're not upholding the quality that you need to. So the non-negotiables is your ticket to that. So this is step 2. You got your list last week. Now you write down your non-negotiables. Okay. And now you start to see how it comes together. And next week, part 3 is how you check in along the way. What kind of feedback do you give? How are you sort of keeping an eye on something, right? Or what if it's done and it's not right? How we deal with that situation, because I do not want to leave you hanging. It's not going to be perfect the first time. Maybe it will be. I hope it is. But if it's not perfect, do not worry. We're going to keep going. And this is how we delegate again, even after we're like, I don't know. And you know this, I know it's possible because I have been there. I have gone from being the worst delegator to being a pretty proficient delegator, I will say, and by applying these strategies. All right. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope this podcast makes leading your team feel just a little bit easier. If you liked this episode, check out my most popular tool for staying in the know of what your team's working on without having to micromanage at leahgarvin.com/snippets. And if you're looking for more support for yourself as a leader or for the team you're managing, don't hesitate to reach out at leahgarvin.com. See you next time.